Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Showcase number 9, featuring Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane. And this was the first solo comic of Lois Lane. She had two or three tryouts in Showcase, and I guess they sold well, because within the year, she had her own comic with a new number 1, and it lasted till the mid-70s. This is 1957, and in 1958 she got her own title. This is obviously not the original Showcase number 9. This is part of DC's Millennium Collection. Around the turn of the millennium, DC published all these facsimile editions of various historically important comics in their library. And it was pretty nice getting, for the price of a normal comic, getting a facsimile of these original comics that are way too expensive to buy the originals of. And as we can see in this Al Plastino cover, that the formula set pretty early on. It's the Mort Weisinger formula, which he used in Jimmy Olsen and all the Superman titles, where there's some ludicrous scenario on the cover. And I guess the idea was that kids would have to buy it to find out what convoluted series of events would lead to this. And that's what usually was the solution. Very crazy, inane solutions to these plot problems. We have a little introductory material by Robert Greenberger. Continues on the inside back cover. And we start with the first story, The Girl in Superman's Past. And this is written by Jerry Coleman and drawn by Al Plastino. I really like this Al Plastino art. It's very like Alex Raymond, like classic comic strip art. It's almost looks like a really well-drawn romance comic, the way he draws their faces. I mean, I love the way he draws Lana Lang in this. And this is basically the first meeting between Lois Lane and Lana Lang. Lana Lang is Clark Kent's childhood sweetheart. And, of course, Lois Lane is Clark Kent's current sweetheart. If you want to call them that, they never do anything. But we start off in the Daily Planet offices. Lana Lang is visiting Clark in the big city. She's planning a smooch on him. He seems pretty embarrassed. And Lois almost seems jealous, even though she thinks Clark is a big drip. But she's like, this is a place of business. And Clark is very flustered. Look at this weird panel here. It looks like Charles Burns drew it. Like, Superman all of a sudden looks really small. And his head is extra tiny. Look at that. So bizarre. So Lois and Lana meet. And even though they're friendly, they're obviously already have this rivalry about, they both love Superman. And they're basically trying to one-up each other with their relationship with Superman. They're each showing off photos that Superman and Superboy gave them with inscriptions saying, affectionately Superman. So that's like a clue that like, oh, look how much he likes me. So they're really, they're definitely, they have this rivalry. Lana even tells Lois about how Superboy once kissed her on the cheek. I guess that's a big deal. So it's almost like they consummated their relationship. Another great face there. So Lana starts off the war, and she's like, well, I have a lunch date with Superman tomorrow. And Lois is like, she's planning to queer the deal. So she shows up at their date, and she's like, Superman, I'm late for this important interview with a senator. I only have 5 minutes. I'll be late unless you help me. She's basically trying to break up the date. So Superman, this is where the Mort Weisinger factor kicks in. This is just so convoluted and ridiculous. So he stops a junk dealer who's driving his cart by at that moment. And he kind of accosts him and says, can I take some of the scrap metal? Then he starts chewing it, and sharpens them with his fingernails into perfect nails. And then he makes this kite, this giant kite, and then lashes Lois to it. And then with his super breath, he blows it to her important meeting with the senator. It looks like he's just blowing it to the skyscraper. So he basically he wants to help Lois, but he doesn't want to, run out on his date. So that's how he solves it. So the next day, Lois has got a lunch date with Superman, and Lana's going to turn the tables on her. So she shows up and says, I'm getting a tryout at this TV station. It's my big chance, but I'm so nervous. I think only the sight of you while I broadcast, that's the only thing that would calm me so I can get through this. And so Superman flies off with another really dumb plan. Look at this body here, like how they used to draw Superman. He kind of looks like he's just fat. And his head is so small. But he's just really strange anatomy there. Very barrel-chested. And so Superman goes and gets these logs and makes this giant platform. And then he grabs the restaurant table. He says, hey, I'm going to borrow this for a while. And basically he sent Lana off. He said, Lana, trust me, I'll be there for your tryout. And then he does all this. So, I mean, in a way, though, he is ditching Lois. He's doing this stupid project. So it's just so dumb. So Lana's doing her tryout at the television station. And somehow this platform is like floating in midair. And Superman and Lois continue their meal. So he has his cake and he eats it too. Because she can still look out the window and see Superman and be calmed. So the women realize that, like, okay, that was a stalemate. But Lois comes up with a really crackpot scheme to figure out if Superman likes her more than Lana, or vice versa. So the next day, I guess, there's this meteor shower, and Superman's batting all these meteors away from the city. And Lois goes to this robot factory. And I guess they have like a robot-controlled glider and steamroller. And Lois says, I'll write a story about your business for the Daily Planet if you let me borrow these for a little while. And the guy shows him, yeah, that would be good advertising, I guess. Here's the control panel that activates these things. So, God, this is such a dumb idea. So Lana gets in the glider. Lois is going to remote control it. And then she gets in the path of the steamroller, which she's controlling too. So they know that Superman's going to see him because he's knocking these meteorites out of the sky. And he says, they're both in danger at the same moment. I have time to save them both, but which one should I save first? And then he thinks to himself, he says, after their shenanigans the past 2 days, I suspect they're trapping me into revealing which one of them I like better. But then he sees another falling meteor and he gives him an idea. He's going to teach them not to play games. It's kind of an interesting face there for Superman. And so he basically pretends to ignore both Lois and Lana and knock this meteor out of the sky. Lana is thinking to herself, she's like, oh my God, he's not even paying attention to us. For all he cares, we'll both be killed. But then a sudden updraft rescues Lana, and the glider safely lands. Meanwhile, the meteor falls right in front of the steamroller, causing a crater, which the steamroller falls into and crashes. Lois thinks the same thing. Is like, oh, that was just dumb luck that meteor happened to land there. Superman's more interested in the meteor than me. But then Lana has the realization. She looks at the steamroller and says, Superman could have struck that meteor at just the right angle so it would dig a hole and stop the steamroller. Maybe he saved Lois, but did it in a way that it wouldn't hurt my feelings. And Lois has a similar thought when she looks at the glider. Superman could have caused that updraft. And meanwhile, Superman is gloating in the distance. And he's thinking that will keep Lois and Lana guessing for a while. And this is the template of many Lois Lane stories, almost all of them, where Lois will try to figure out Superman's identity. And, she's a clever woman. She's a reporter. But Superman will always trick her and gaslight her and make her feel like she's nuts or an idiot. And he's kind of cruel about it. He'll just laugh at her, even though sometimes he causes Lois this emotional trauma. And, he'll pretend to be dead or something and put Lois through this grief. And at the end, he'll always be laughing like, Lois, she'll never figure out my identity. What a dummy. This is a weird little filler, this odd newspaper items. And it's just kind of trivia about the newspaper business. Very weird. So we have the second story here, The New Lois Lane. This is written by Otto Binder of Captain Marvel fame and drawn by Ruben Moreira, who as far as I know, I've never seen this guy before. And once again, I really like his style. It's, once again, very kind of like classic comic strip art. And some of the faces are really great. It's almost like he draws Superman with more character than normal. Usually Superman is just like generic handsome guy. But Superman sometimes even looks goofy in these some of these panels. But he does seem to have more personality, more character. So we start the story off. Lois Lane is trying to get Superman to come to the Daily Planet dance with her. She wants him to be her escort, and he blows her off once again. He's always blowing off Lois Lane. So she goes to one of those coin-operated scale machines that they used to have in the old days, and it gives her a fortune. It says, to win the man of your dreams, adopt a new strategy. So she vows to stop trying to pry into Superman's privacy and figure out his secret identity, hoping that when he finds out, he'll be pleased and be a little more friendly. So she's down at the orphanage where Superman is entertaining the kids, doing some charity work, and she's reporting on it. She sees him flies off and thinks to herself, oh, Superman's probably going to find a secluded spot so he can change back into his everyday guise. Well, I won't try to follow him this time. I'm through with that sort of thing. But then she notices in this alley that she sees these footprints. She's like, Superman must have changed here, but he didn't notice that spilled ink. So she's like, oh, the old me would have followed those footsteps. But she's going to stick to her pledge, and she's not going to follow them. But strangely enough, as disguised Superman walks away, he's thinking, what's wrong? Why isn't Lois following me? And not only is she not following him, she's covering up his tracks so nobody else will discover. Not that I can't imagine how anyone would figure out, like, hey, there's some footprints here. That must be Superman. So Superman's very disturbed at Lois's new loyalty. And he's like, my plan failed. I deliberately left those footprints for Lois to follow so she could discover my other identity. And then we see him here. He's has this other alter ego, Alan Todd. He's adopted this new identity for a special purpose. So then he turns back into Clark Kent. And as he's heading home, there's this guy here, Con Connors, and his little associate. They're kind of low-level criminals. And he has a camera. And he says, ready to confess? One good picture of Superman flying out of your window. That's all I'll need. I'll get it sooner or later. And Clark's all like, oh, don't be ridiculous. And Con Connors says that he saw a body whizzing from your window one night. And kind of a bad choice of words there. Who else would it be but Superman? So Clark is wigging out. He's like, What if there's some disaster and I have to fly out my window as Superman real quick? And of course, Superman could do 50 other things. He could go down the stairs at super speed and go out the back door, whatever. But this becomes a big dilemma. So there is a fire. A fire breaks out across town. So once again, just a really dumb, convoluted solution. Superman grabs this rug, lights it on fire with his heat vision or X-ray eyes, and then uses it kind of as a cloud, a smoke cover. But Connors is all like, oh, that's obviously Superman. Why else would there be a sudden burst of smoke? The evidence is rising against Clark Kent. It's adding up. So Superman takes care of the fire. And then he turns out he had rented this other apartment for his other identity. So his whole plan is that he wants Lois to find out this new alter ego, so she'll tell everyone, and then Connors will think that he was wrong. He'll be like, oh, I guess it's this other guy. Meanwhile, in the Daily Planet office, there's this area where all Superman's trophies are kept. I assume this is before the Fortress of Solitude was invented. And there's this giant, stone box, and a photograph falls out because it cracked open. And it's all a plan of Superman. I love this, too, how, they underestimate the intelligence of the readers here. They probably were all 7-year-olds. But right here he's saying, talking about his Alan Todd secret identity. And then 2 panels later, the caption has to say, Alan Superman Todd, to remind us that this is Superman. So he's watching her with her X-ray vision, and apparently it's a photo of Alan Todd, and on the back it says, attention people of 25th century, the other side of this photo reveals Superman's secret identity. So Lois rips up the photo. Not only does she not even look at it, she doesn't want to know, but she rips it up so no one else will find it. And then she meets Alan Todd. Alan Todd is a traveling salesman. And, this is just another dumb one. As he leaves, he applies super pressure to the doorknob, which will leave fingerprints for Lois to discover, quote unquote. And Lois, of course, does. She says, Superman must have been here. And he's left his fingerprints. I'll grab this hammer and destroy them. So she bashes in the doorknob I don't know why she just didn't. Well, I guess she couldn't just polish them off, but it's just so weird. So once again, Superman is just like, God damn it. So finally Lois tells Superman what she's been up to. She's like, yeah, I've been, I stopped prying into your secret identity, and I'm even covering up your tracks. And she's like, don't you like me a little more now? And Superman doesn't seem to give a shit. He's just frustrated that Lois is working against him inadvertently. So he decides to write a letter to Connors that says, hey, Lois Lane knows Superman's secret identity. Then he sends a note to Lois Lane. And it's this supposedly from this old man who knows Superman's secret identity, and he wants to pass it on to Lois before he dies. But right then, Connors and his buddies show up. I just love this classic art here. These faces and everything. It's just nice looking stuff. So they basically grab the note from her hand, and they're like, okay, you're going to lead us to this address. And they get to the second apartment that Superman rented. And, of course, that guy's there. And, his fake identity. And they shoot him, and the bullets bounce off. So they're like, Alan Todd is Superman. And Connors is like, I was wrong this whole time. It's not Clark Kent. So it worked. His plan worked. Superman reveals himself and basically says, yeah, I'm going to retire that Alan Todd secret identity and just pick a new one. And so you still won't know who I am. And then at the end, Lois is back to her old ways. And she tells Clark, just think, a brand new secret identity of Superman for me to track down. I'm so excited. And then Clark thinks to himself, he kind of admits that, I was a little bummed when Lois didn't seem to care about my secret identity. I was actually missing our battle of our battle of wits we used to have. I think also a little part of him, though, was a little jealous or feeling neglected. Here we have a little gag strip from Henry Boltinoff. He had like hundreds of these little gag strips in DC Comics in the 50s and early 60s. Jerry the Jitterbug. Pretty dumb. And here we have another weird filler, newspaper talk, which tells us the Latin roots of various words associated with the newspaper business. It's incredibly boring and dumb. Here we have a 2-page filler, Sleuths in Skirts. This is about police women and the vital work they do in metropolitan cities. Really, it's just there to satisfy the postal regulations so they get a cheaper rate. And now we have our last story, once again written by Otto Binder and drawn by Ruben Moreira. And this is Mrs. Superman. Splash panel totally sets up the intriguing premise or ridiculous premise. So one day, Lois invites Clark Kent to join her and Jimmy Olsen on their trip to the beach. He says, I have an appointment, and Lois thinks to herself, Superman also has an appointment at the orphanage. I wonder. Look at that great face there. And then Clark suspects that Lois might be onto him, so he says, Jimmy, would you help me move my desk? And he acts all like wimpy. Jimmy's doing all the lifting, and he's all sweating and going, oh, it's so heavy. So Lois is like, oh, how could I have ever thought this wimp Clark Kent could be Superman? How silly. So at the beach, Lois Lane conks her head in some shallow water. And Superman happens to be there, rescuing another person. So he finds Lois conked out, and he takes her to the hospital. She's kind of in a coma, but she's got a smile on her lips. Apparently she's having a really pleasant dream, and as she's mumbling, so Superman's listening and realizing what she's dreaming about. And she's all like, oh, Superman, my darling husband, you're mine, all mine. And in her dream, she's married to Superman, and they've got a little super baby, and everything's super perfect. So the doctor says she hasn't the slightest desire to wake up and end her beautiful dream, but this is what's prolonging her coma, and it's going to endanger her life. So the doctor says, yeah, the only way to get her out of the dream is to make the dream not good anymore. Make her unhappy in her dream. We all know Superman's good at that. So Superman kind of whispers into Lois's ear, trying to change the nature of her dream. And the first thing he figures he'll do is, within the dream, he'll reveal his secret identity to Lois, knowing that she thinks Clark is a big loser, and it'll totally ruin her feelings for her husband. But of course, in the dream, she's just like, oh, well, you are Superman, so that's what really matters. Kiss me, Clark. So Superman's all like, it didn't work, damn it. So then he basically just whispers some annoying incidents. Like being married to Superman wouldn't be a bed of roses. He's always got to fly off to rescue someone in the middle of dinner. She's got to clean his clothes with a blowtorch instead of just throwing them in the laundry. But it doesn't faze her. She's like, yeah, but still, I'm married to Superman, one of the greatest heroes of the world. So he puts another idea in her head. He basically makes a super baby really unruly because he has all the strength of Superman, but he's a dumb baby, So he becomes really exacerbating. He even finds this grizzly bear and rides it home. And Lois has to run in the house. Later on, she gives him a spanking. And she's like, I'm at the end of the rope with this kid. But she realizes that, even though he's a pain in the ass, this kid, I'm just so proud of him. And, he'll take your place one day as Superman. I'll be the proudest mother in the world. So Superman is just like, God damn it, I failed again. So then he figures out the one thing that'll really make Lois unhappy. So in the dream world, I guess Lois, of course, when she got married to Superman, had to step down as girl reporter. Even though she's an adult, she's still a girl reporter. And I guess another woman named Lulu Lyons took her place. So just like Lois, when she was a reporter, was always getting into trouble, now Lulu Lyons always gets into trouble and Superman always has to rescue her. And apparently she's really pretty. And Lois is watching on TV as he rescues her, and she's totally on the make with Superman. She's like, you're so brave and strong and wonderful. And Lois is all furious. She's like, let go of him, you hussy. He's my husband. And she notices that Clark is kind of smiling back at her. So when he gets home, Lois is ready to give him the business. She calls him a worm. And then Superman accidentally calls her Lulu. And so Lois throws a vase at Superman's head. And she says, my heart is broken. And that snaps her out of it. And she wakes up from her coma. Because her dream isn't happy anymore. Oh, so ridiculous. And then as Superman flies out the window, looking very much like a Wally Wood drawing, she says, if I ever become Mrs. Superman, will I be happy or unhappy? I guess I'll never know unless it really happens someday. And I guess she just had to wait a few decades, and it does happen. And I think she was happy for the most part. And it's a good thing Mort Weisinger wasn't still editor, because he would have made it a crazy wedding and a crazy marriage. So here we have another Henry Boltinoff comic strip, Ollie. It's a pretty dumb gag. I've read a bunch of these in these old DC comics, and I don't think I've ever seen a funny one. So if any of you out there have an example of a funny Henry Boltinoff comic, please send me a link in the comments below. Here's the continuation of that background matter by Robert Greenberger. The credits for all the stories. And, I did mention that Al Plastino inks those two stories by Ruben Morera, the last two stories. And so maybe that's where that classic Alex Raymond-like cartooning is coming from. So that's it, guys. Showcase Comics number 9, featuring Lois Lane. Like I've said before, these Mort Weisinger edited titles are just so enjoyable to me. They're so dumb, but they're so fun. And like I promised, I'm going to try to do these more often. The last one I did was quite a while ago, but I'm definitely going to, I don't know, every 3 months or so, I'm going to try to squeeze one of these in. Either Superboy or Jimmy Olsen or Lois Lane. So I hope you enjoyed looking at this video, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.